This is Defiance Daily, dispatches for the Defiant. I am your host, Miles Taylor, as you can see, in transit. But the stories today are so important, we have to bring them to you, even from a car, because the pressure is rising in the United States. And you can see it at the airport. You can see it inside the detention centers in this country. And you can feel it every time you look at the price of a flight or at a tank of gas. In the last 24 hours, the White House made a series of decisions that are now hitting people directly, very directly. A deal to stabilize airports was on the table, but it was rejected by the White House. Families are still sitting inside detention facilities all around the country. And now the country's most recognizable children's educator is speaking out about what she has seen. And on the global stage, the administration is shifting positions in real time as the economic fallout from the war with Iran starts to build and compound. So tonight, we're going to walk through what is happening across all of it. And later, we will be joined by David Sandalo, former senior official at the White House, the State Department, and the Department of Energy, where he was an assistant secretary, to break down what all of this means for gas prices, the economy, and where it could be headed next. Because whether it's airports or immigration or energy costs, folks, the common thread right now is all of that pressure, and it is rising. Before we go on, let me just say this. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are with us, especially for the first time. Here at Defiance Daily, we talk about the issues that matter, and we don't just talk about them. Every single week, we take real actions to confront them. Now let's get into it. We start tonight at the airport because what is happening there right now traces back to a decision made just 48 hours ago. Donald Trump rejected a deal that would have restored DHS funding and gotten that department and its component agencies like TSA operating back to normal. It was within reach. DHS, of course, has been operating without full funding since February 14th, when Republicans could not reach a deal to keep the department running and did not have enough Democratic votes to be able to pass a continuation. Senate Majority Leader John Thune put forward a proposal the other day that would have allowed TSA workers to get paid again and to reopen the agency and begin stabilizing airports. But guess what happened? Guess who said no? The President of the United States. According to recent reporting, Donald Trump rejected that deal, even after being told the bill could pass and would provide immediate relief to TSA. Not just TSA and the employees, the passengers traveling through U.S. airports, the passengers waiting in some cases up to 6 hours to be screened through security. Instead, Donald Trump tied any agreement to the Save America Act, a voting bill that does not have any support to pass. A bill that has been widely derided as one of the biggest voter suppression bills in American history, and a bill Donald Trump thinks is essential for his candidates to rig the midterm elections in their favor. That was his condition. That was the condition that blocked a resolution to this crisis. And without that bill, Donald Trump said there is no deal to get the airports functioning on time. So funding remains frozen. TSA workers remain unpaid. And as soon as this Friday, the 27th, they will miss a second paycheck after already having missed one, putting airports even further under strain. And the pressure is not just on the nation's capital. It's on you. More than 400 TSA officers have quit since the shutdown began, many after weeks of working without pay. And across the country, those call-out rates are climbing, with some airports seeing more than a third of their staff simply not showing up for shifts. That, of course, as people around this country know, means fewer checkpoints are open. The lines are getting longer, hours and hours. Airports are warning passengers in some cases to arrive as early as 5 hours before their flights. And delays and cancellations of flights are mounting. Why? Because their passengers are not clearing security in time to get on their airplanes. Instead of resolving this funding gap, the administration, this White House, made a different move. They decided to send ICE into the airports. ICE agents are now, as of today, being deployed to major hubs, including Atlanta, New York, Phoenix, Pittsburgh, and beyond, to help allegedly manage passenger flow and fill gaps as TSA staffing drops. That's what some officials in the administration say. At the same time, Donald Trump said on a Truth Social post that agents would go to the airports and they would search for people in the country illegally, and they would arrest those people in the country illegally. That's not what TSA is looking for. That's not what TSA has asked for. That's not the problem TSA is facing. That's not why lines are long. Lines are not long because there are illegal immigrants blocking the checkpoints. Lines are long because there's no money for DHS because the president won't agree to a deal. Now, at the same time, Donald Trump sent those ICE agents in. He's telling them not to wear masks while operating in airports, even though he has supported masks during enforcement operations. But that's apparently creating some new problems because agents are now visible and encountering a very angry public in crowded terminals. There have been instances of them being photographed and confronted and trying to avoid cameras as tensions rise. Take a look. We're allowed to photograph. Stop following. First Amendment right. Really can't do anything. Have a good day. Have a good day. Go on. There's a lot of videos of that online. Just take a look at how these agents have become so comfortable with their masks that now they don't even want to be seen in public. They refuse to be filmed in an airport where no one is going to harm them, but where they don't want their identities seen. I wonder why that is. I wonder what it is that ICE agents have been engaged in over the past year of the Trump administration that would make them fearful of being filmed. I'll leave that question for you all to answer. At the same time, the cost of getting on an airplane is rising fast. The war with Iran has driven a sharp increase in oil prices, with Brent crude up more than 50% in the past month and jet fuel rising even faster. The cost is now being passed on directly to travelers. Data shows some of the busiest routes in the country have seen prices more than double in a matter of weeks. Flights from New York to Los Angeles have jumped from around $167 to over $400 on average. New York to London routes are seeing similar spikes, with some fares increasing by more than 70% in just 1 week. Flights to the Caribbean are up sharply as well, with some tickets climbing from roughly $165 to more than $500, and all of it tied to decisions being made in Washington. Decisions about a war with a country that is central to the provision of oil all around the world. The White House had an opportunity to ease this, an opportunity to stop this, an opportunity to avoid this altogether. But it was the president's decision. The president's decision to go to war, even though he was told by aides, even though he should have known that the Strait of Hormuz could be closed, that the price of oil would rise. And the result is millions of Americans now dealing with extraordinary costs every time they travel. And inside of Donald Trump's orbit, this is how some of his closest allies are talking about it.
The ICE agents at the airports to help out. And remember, they said they're not going to work the x-rays. It's too complicated. They're not trained for it, but they're trained to, wait for it, check IDs. That's why it's perfect training for the fall of 2026. This is why it's such a brilliant, this is another 5D chess move for President Trump. Let's get ICE into the airports to help out to the lines. They can't work the machines. You know what to do? Just walk them down. Hey, we're a speed thing too. Can we check your IDs? That's what's going to happen in the fall of 26, because folks, we're tired of having elections stolen. So ICE is going to be there in the fall of 26, just like they're in the airports today. So from the war room, suck on that.
Wow. All right. There's the message. Xander, I want to bring you into the conversation here because, by the way, if this is your first time with us, this is my Defiance.org co-founder, Xander Schultz. The administration's been saying, don't worry. People are hyperventilating. We're not going to send ICE to the polls in November. Well, there's one of Donald Trump's closest allies on his podcast saying, actually, the airports are practice for checking voter IDs at the polls. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, you know what, we talk about the importance of whistleblowers with this administration, and that's certainly true. But these guys out themselves all the time. They really make our job easy at times because they can't help themselves. They're a bunch of social media influencers that want to talk about how smart and cool they are all the time. So that's been helpful. Miles, I used to really worry about our ability to communicate to the American people the dangers of this administration. And I'm not as worried about that. They are making it increasingly obvious every day. Usually, you want to have your repressive troops in some corner of society, like a prison camp where most people can't see them. He now has them working security at our airports, where every person in society is going to come face to face with them and deal with an armed officer wearing a bulletproof vest in your airport. He's doing two of the least popular things at the same time. He's starting a war no one understands, and he's creating an affordability crisis that hurts everyone because it's oil, which the price of oil is infused into nearly every product and service that we purchase. So it's been a hell of a last couple of weeks from these guys. They are certainly making our job easier in terms of communicating, and not just the danger of this administration, but their complete ineptness.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing that I said this morning, Xander, is that as of today, U.S. airports have become the most powerful symbol of America's slide into autocracy. Mm-hmm. Those three things I want people to remember. If you go to the airport today, you're going to be hit by long lines, high prices, and ICE agents with guns roaming the airport, all because of Donald Trump. None of those things were the case a year ago. A year ago, you had cheap as hell flights. You didn't have armed guys roaming around the airport, and you didn't have these lines stretching around the door because you didn't have Donald Trump doing these things. His Iran war, his deep desire for power, and his refusal to agree with Democrats on having DHS abide by the Constitution is the reason all of these things are happening. I mean, I think that's what gets missed in this debate. DHS is closed. Why? Because DHS agents have been systematically violating the constitutional rights of Americans. That's not Miles saying that. That's not Xander saying that. That's hundreds of federal judges around this country who have ruled that there have been thousands of illegal arrests of U.S. citizens, of U.S. permanent residents, and of immigrants in this country, contrary to their constitutional rights. Thousands. That's happened thousands of times. Trump-appointed judges have made some of those rulings. DHS is on a constitution-breaking spree. And so when time came to fund the department, and Republicans, who, by the way, have the House and the Senate and the White House, realized they didn't even have enough votes to be able to pass the legislation, they had to turn to Democrats and say, can you help us fund DHS? And Democrats said, yeah, you know what? We'll help you fund DHS, but our only ask is they comply with the Constitution.
Yeah, their big radical request. Their big radical request is
doors without warrants. Stop wearing masks and refusing to identify yourselves. Stop arresting people without letting them know the cause for their arrest. Basic fundamental things. And the White House can't agree to that. And the president's gone farther and said, nah, we're not going to start respecting the Constitution. And by the way, I want you to pass this bill that's going to make it harder for people around the country to vote.
It's so reminiscent, Miles, of what he did in Minnesota, right? Where they act like they have some agenda, but then, like I was saying earlier, they can't help it. They kind of reveal their ultimate intentions. In Minnesota, he said, sure, I'll pull ICE back. Give me the voting rolls first. We're seeing the same thing here, right? It's like, yeah, the airport's going to be paying the ass. I'm using, ICE in these provocative, harmful ways. But you know what? Pass the Save America Act, and maybe I'll support this bill. It's so reminiscent. I'm rewatching The Sopranos for the 12th time.
It's the best way to understand the Trump administration.
It's dead on their playbook, right? It's they find some point of leverage that's completely disassociated with their goal, but it's a way to inflict pain and coerce obedience in some way. And so ultimately what these guys are doing, and luckily for us, they just say it publicly all the time.
That's absolutely right, my friend. Well, look, there is another public figure who is calling all of this out. And she's the most famous person in my household because I have a young child. And that person is Miss Rachel. Miss Rachel, whose videos are watched by millions of kids all around America, all around the world, spent time this week speaking directly with children being held inside of an ICE detention center in Texas. And the interviews are hard to ignore. Note, the volume on this clip you're about to hear was tough to turn up, so please adjust your volume. Turn it up to listen, turn it back down afterwards. I'll give you a beat. Here's Miss Rachel.
Really miss your school and your friends?
Very much.
Oh.
Don't to be there to be happy. Miss all of them. If you could help us to live this.
You want us
I don't
to
want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. It's good here.
Oh, I'm so sorry. A lot of people want to try to help.
I want to live or go to the spelling bee.
You have a real gift for spelling. You're so smart.
When I eat the food from here, my stomach started hurting.
Saber, you know what? We talked to your teachers today. We talked to the principal in your school, and they miss you so much.
I wish I could live before the spelling bee.
Yeah, we're gonna try.
Look at what he's doing. He's sending you a heart.
Oh my God, so much love.
I don't know if you caught that there. The child who is in immigration detention, 9-year-old, just wants to go to the spelling bee. That's what he wants. He wants to get out so that he can go to the spelling bee. This is not some isolated, special, unique case. More than 2,300 children have been placed into detention with their parents under this expanded crackdown, many held for weeks or even months at a time. About 50 children remain in that facility right now, the facility in Dilley, which is where Miss Rachel was speaking to a detained 9-year-old, down from the hundreds held there earlier this year. Parents and attorneys describe kids losing weight, getting sick, and living in facilities where lights stay on around the clock and access to basic care is limited. Now, I know it's hard to see it, but there is light to this story. After speaking with those children, Miss Rachel said she is now working with lawyers and advocacy groups to try to shut this facility down and get families out. Now, that matters because it shows how visible these stories have become. To be clear, Miss Rachel is the premier digital children's entertainer with 13 to 17 million subscribers and billions of views, probably 1 billion of those in my own household. Her voice and her activism is reaching people who were never part of this conversation before. Xander, I know you have a little one as well. You know, I'm sure Miss Rachel is ubiquitous in your household. This did seem to me like a breakthrough moment, is that, you know, people are just sick of this. She has every reason not to touch this issue from a PR and making money perspective, and every reason to touch it from a humanitarian perspective, and she is.
I spent so long. You know, we spent about 10 years working in refugee camps that housed a lot of children. Yep. You know, at times the place we were working at 3,000 to 4,000 children. Yeah, it's not a place for kids. And the thing that's so shameful is the unnecessary nature of this crisis. Like, there's nothing about the resources available to us, the options available to us, that mandates this is how we have to treat the children here. There are so many ways, and this expands out to our broader justice system, our broader immigration system. There are so many ways that we can go about different societal goals. If we want stricter immigration policy, less immigrants coming into the country illegally, it's totally possible. There's nothing, and sometimes this debate gets like stuck in this binary. Well, are you pro or anti-immigrant or something like that? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. No matter what we decide together, because we live in democracy, what our immigration policy is or what our justice policy is, there is a moral baseline that we can agree to follow, and we can agree to pursue whatever goals we take on as a nation without violating that moral baseline. And I think when you talk to Americans on an individual to individual level across left, right, poor, rich, conservative, you know, progressive, whatever you want to call it, almost everyone cares about protecting children. No one wants to see children harmed. And I hope on the backs of this, whatever we decide to do with our policies and nation state goals, we can refine that. I feel like we've given up in so many ways on a shared moral center.
Well, I mean, Xander, I'm going to give you the answer now, because this doesn't require any sort of policy imagination to not have this many children in detention. The reason it's happening is this administration lied about who it was going after. It said it was primarily going after criminal aliens. And instead, we found out from data over the past few months that 90% of the people detained didn't have criminal records. Now, here's the thing. You can't make it so that kids are never in immigration custody, because you don't want to just leave them alone without a parent if the parent has to be deported, right? If the parent's a criminal alien being deported to another country, as long as they're not a danger to the child, you want them to be able to go home to Brazil or, wherever it is that the parent might be deported to. But that should be limited. It should be those limited cases of those people we told were being targeted, criminal aliens. Instead, 90%, again, of the people in ICE custody, according to recent stats, were people without a criminal record. So they're going and just arresting people who are mothers, fathers, then swooping their kids into custody, people who we were told weren't going to be targeted. And now you've got thousands of those kids unnecessarily in custody. I mean, that is absolutely extraordinary. It's also one of the reasons, Xander, that we at defiance.org have worked with the Save America movement to invest in exposing this network of secret ICE prisons that are being built around the country. Now, I don't say that lightly. I used to be the chief of staff of this department. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This isn't some outlandish thing to say. This administration is indeed trying to surreptitiously retrofit warehouses all around the country to dramatically expand the Department of Homeland Security's detention capacity, to the point that right now the plans on the books would envision DHS having as much or more detention capacity than the entire federal prison system. I've been saying this a lot, and I'm going to keep saying it. I want you to think of that, folks. DHS, if the Trump administration has its way, will have more detention space than the entirety of the federal prison system, which people have already derided for being one of the biggest prison networks on the face of the globe, if not the biggest. And yet, DHS detention facilities don't have the same oversight of the courts or people who are convicted by a jury and sent to jail, or all sorts of oversight layers of the department. They are far less accountable. This, friends, is why we are doing what we are doing. Xander, I'm very proud that we invested in those efforts with Defiance, that Defiance.org invested in those efforts with Save America Movement to start talking more about these facilities and exposing them, because it has a real human consequence. And frankly, as I've been saying for years, in the wrong hands, these things are like the architecture of a police state.
Yeah. And look, Stephen Miller and Trump and them have talked about this before. This was also happening in Greece when I was working in the refugee crisis there. This desire to make things so cruel that people self-deport. Don't come at all and self-deport, right? When we talk about the conditions there, conditions are not only, to be harmful to that child, but it is so the word gets out that your children are at risk if you come to this country, or your children are at risk if you stay in this country. And so it is a cruel goal at the center of this thing. I'm looking at on my desktop here, I have a Lincoln in a quote. He said, "You can tell a character of a man by what makes him angry." And I'm angry. Miles is angry about this. I know you guys watching this are angry, and we're going to use that anger to build a movement that shuts these places down.
Amen, my friend. Amen. And that anger is not just limited to domestic crises, because of course this administration has us embroiled in a very significant international one. And so I want to turn to Iran, and I want to show you a clip of Donald Trump this morning. Take a look.
No, we have a very serious chance of making a deal. That doesn't guarantee anything. I'm not guaranteeing anything. I'm not going to come out here in a week or 2 weeks and have you all say, "Oh, you said." I didn't say anything. All I'm saying is we are in the throes of a real possibility of making a deal. And I think if I were a betting man, I'd bet for it. But again, I'm not guaranteeing anything. They want to make a deal very bad.
So which is it? Is there a deal or not? Does Iran really want to make a deal? What's keeping the Iranians from making a deal? Well, maybe it's that Donald Trump is having a one-sided conversation. He has claimed that talks are underway with Iran, but Iran says that's simply not true. An Iranian official flatly denied that there are any negotiations whatsoever with the United States and warned that what Trump is saying is fake and is being used to influence oil markets. So on one side, the White House is signaling that there's progress in talks. On the other side, the country they're supposedly negotiating with says those negotiations are completely fabricated. And that gap matters because just days the administration was threatening to escalate this conflict. Donald Trump gave Iran a 48-hour ultimatum: open the Strait of Hormuz or the United States would strike Iranian energy infrastructure. That deadline came and went, and Iran did not comply. But now those strikes are being put on hold. Now, the White House claims that this is because they started having productive conversations that, again, Iran says have never happened. So while Donald Trump attempts to create this illusion of progress, a lot of people think another thing is happening. Taco. Trump always chickens out. And you can see it in the numbers. Nothing has changed. Oil is up. Markets are reacting. And the cost of escalation is getting harder to ignore, causing the White House to falter on their own boundaries that they've set, their own red lines, in an attempt to contain the fallout. In a major shift, they temporarily lifted sanctions on, get this, Iranian oil already at sea to try to push more supply into the market. Now, that move could free up more oil, up to 140 million barrels, but that's only a few days of global demand. And again, the country the United States is bombing, whose oil they have sanctioned, they are now being forced to free up because of a problem they created. This is a contradiction that is very hard to ignore. And it's certainly not a long-term strategy. This is a pressure response. We're now fighting Iran in a war and purchasing oil from them, or at least other parts of the world will. Where do we think that money's going? Perhaps to fund our own enemy's war chest and the very war we have provoked. The disparity of events was highlighted over the weekend as CNN's Dana Bash held a town hall with U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz. Take a look at this exchange.
The U.S. lifted sanctions on 140 million barrels of Iranian oil. The U.S. lifted sanctions on Iran. So just to be clear, the administration is now allowing Iran, the country that it is at war with, to sell its oil, make money, and almost certainly use that money in its war against the U.S. Why?
Dan, I think you have to tell the rest of that story. That's a little bit misleading.
Please.
The measure is targeted towards oil that's already out there on ships, already out there in storage, and to the previous question is very temporary to basically defeat the Iranian strategy of driving energy prices so high, causing pain on consumers all the way, all over the world.
And money will go into their coffers?
There's someone I want to bring into the conversation to talk about this with. Our guest today is a former senior official at the White House, a former assistant secretary at the State Department, a former acting undersecretary at the Department of Energy. Here with us on Defiance Daily is David Sandalo. David, it's great to be with you, my friend. I want you to help me make sense of that because I love that U.S. UN Ambassador Mike Waltz says, Dana, you got to tell the full story. Well, the full story is that we started this war, and that's why prices are surging. And that's the part that Mike Waltz never seemed to get to. What do you make of all that?
Well, the fog of war is thick today, Miles. I mean, thanks for having me on. And I want to get your question. But first, I want to thank you and Xander for spotlighting this problem of children in ICE detention centers. It is a tragedy. It is an outrage. And we can't do enough to shine attention on this fact. I believe and I hope that this can really motivate voters, motivate people to see what's happening in this country today. But back to the issue of this astonishing move to provide a general license for the export of Iranian oil, lifting the sanctions essentially, which is only going to provide revenue to the Iranian regime. And when Mike Waltz was asked to explain it, his explanation was kind of irrelevant. He said the oil's already out there on the water. Well, the oil was going to be bought at a discounted price by refineries in different places that don't care about access to the US financial markets. Now it can be bought by anybody, which means the Iranians will receive more money. And by the way, there's an interesting angle on this, which is that the Iranians are now saying that the purchases need to be made with Chinese RMB. And we'll see whether they can actually implement or enforce that. But the idea now is that while we're haltingly fighting a war of one kind, the Chinese or the Iranians are looking at the possibility of a financial or monetary battle using this tool against us. I think the irony is rich here, particularly because many of the critics of this Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the agreement that designed to keep us out of this war, many of the critics of that agreement criticized the Obama and the Biden administration over the fact that money was flowing to Iran in that deal. Now, under the Trump administration, even more money is going to flow to Iran as a result of this very puzzling, to be charitable, very puzzling policy move.
David, I'm wondering, what's the impact of administration setting a red line they don't intend to follow through on? Because, this was reminiscent a little bit of Obama setting that red line with Syria and chemical gases. And of course, Assad used sarin gas and nothing happened. And it felt like they were able to test the waters and run forward fearlessly after that. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the strategic misfire of setting a red line you don't intend to follow?
There's so many lines that are being set by the president here. I mean, I struggle for the metaphor. Maybe it's a square or a pentagon or a hexagon. I mean, he's identified 6 different objectives or so for what we're doing there. And he says we're going to do different things every day. One day he says we're going to destroy the Iranian regime. And I believe that today he has said that he's considering he would like to jointly manage the Straits of Hormuz with the Iranian regime. So it's a muddle. And the impact, to answer your question, is a loss of credibility for the United States. Certainly for this president, but I fear beyond that, just a loss of credibility for the United States in foreign affairs.
David, I want to ask you to put on your forecasting cap right now. And I know that it's hard to predict what Donald Trump will do. We had no handle on that inside the first administration. But let's just say the war continues in the current fashion for more than a week, which seems like a very, very, very likely prediction. What's going to start happening in the markets here? I mean, we've already seen prices go up, but where does it go next?
I think continued upward pressure on oil prices and on natural gas prices. And we've seen extraordinary volatility. I think one thing to look for is when the markets stop reacting to what Donald Trump says. And I think it's very interesting today. The markets reacted quickly to a statement by Donald Trump. They've done that before, but at some point markets are going to start discounting, then realizing when Donald Trump says something, it doesn't have a lot of relationship to what's actually going to happen. But looking out over the next several weeks, I mean, if the Straits of Hormuz continue to be functionally closed or mostly closed, we're going to see continued lack of oil getting to global markets. And by the way, lack of natural gas as well, which is going to have a big impact on Asian economies, on European economies. And it's also urea, a very important product for fertilizer, which is coming out of the Persian Gulf, and helium, another important product which is being interrupted by this whole war. So to answer your question, Miles, we're going to see continued pressure on the global economy. It's going to ripple through in various unpredictable ways. The volatility is going to be high, but we're going to see supply chains disrupted in ways that are starting to be reminiscent of the pandemic. Let's hope we don't get to that level, but that's the direction that we're headed.
Yeah, unfortunately, the pandemic was, a disaster that none of us were in control of. This feels like Trump is almost intentionally trying to make us a isolated pariah state, North Korean style, that he can rule over. I wonder, David, this club right here, our digital club, defiance.org, we're all about what people can do. And I wonder, if there's something you haven't seen that's in action yet, that's on your mind that you would like to see in the world for us to fight back effectively. What's your kind of, blue sky idea of what we should be doing to push back against this administration?
the most important thing is register to vote, get out to vote, get your neighbors to vote. What happens in November is going to be incredibly important. But, in the shorter term, I've been talking to people in both Europe and Asia in the past several months, and they've often expressed surprise to me at how little protest they see from the American people. It's just not visible. And I've often said to them, no, there's a lot happening, but for whatever reason, it's not visible. And so I think, expressing your outrage, your opinion, at protest movements in various different ways that's visible to the rest of the world, it really makes a difference. A lot of, there's so much disappointment in our country around the world right now. I think so many people had a vision of America, which they're just seeing erode, and they're looking for signals that the America that they believed in, not always perfect for sure, but the American ideals that they believed in are still alive in our country, and they are. They are, as thank you for everything you're doing. But I think we just need to send those signals to the world.
Well, David, it's a propitious week to make that recommendation, because I'll remind folks, and we'll do this again on Wednesday, which is our weekly mission brief when we talk about actions we're taking. This coming Saturday is No King's Day 3, and I think we will see millions of Americans around the country take to the streets. But heed David's message. Go out there, and don't just go out there. Bring other people with you. That's going to be our big message this Wednesday. So spoiler alert, that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking all about those No Kings protests, our friends at Indivisible who are organizing them, and the millions of Americans who seem poised to make this a historic day, hopefully one that will resonate with the audiences David mentioned, not just here in the United States, but around the world. They should see the rejection of this president and this war and the situation that he has put us all in. David Sandalo, it's wonderful to have you here, my friend. I hope you'll be willing to join us in the future. Hopefully things don't get so bad that we need your emergency analysis. Maybe we'll be on the back end of this talking about, it could have gotten even worse, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Let's hope. Thanks for having me, Miles and Xander.
Thank you,
Thanks,
David.
my friend. And Xander, I get to hand over to you the most fun part of the day, because I have to continue this journey onto this dinner in DC that hopefully I'll be able to talk a little bit about, a dinner tied to this conflict in Iran. So I'm going to be going and joining one of the ambassadors from the region, hopefully to talk about how we can end this thing. But who knows?
Yeah, can you figure it out tonight? Can you do us a favor and figure out how to end this thing tonight?
I think so. Well, I had another dinner last week that I think very nearly ended the Iran war. I'll tell you about that later. But unfortunately, dessert was served too soon and we couldn't figure it out. But I appreciate it, my friend. We'll touch base tomorrow, Defiance Daily, 5 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. But Xander's going to close us out with the best segment of the day.
Miles,
who is joining? Yeah.
Before you go, I got a present for you. If you go to whereismiles.com, and our audience, you can go there too. You can drop a pin and guess where Miles is.
Will find me on the side of the road just outside of Washington, D.C., the vacation site of an apartment complex near the Beltway. All right. Thanks, brother. I'll see you.
All right. As Miles mentioned, we're going on to who is joining the Defiance. And for today, we are focused not so much on a person, but a tool. We go to CBS Chicago for the story.
We're also following this story tonight. It appears someone hacked into a Chicago Department of Transportation traffic sign. Our cameras caught this video at Lake and Dearborn showing a sign with a negative comment about President Trump and a negative comment about ICE. We are waiting to hear back from CDOT tonight on what happened.
Mercedes, wonderful story there. I guess I'm filling in at the end here, so I'm ready for the Q&A. Mercedes, do we have questions from our audience? Nothing coming in yet. Please drop your questions. Like I'll say to David's point earlier, it is so important that we show up not just for ourselves and not just for kind of the mental health it provides to see ourselves in solidarity with one another, but also for the rest of the world to see that this isn't the America that we believe in. It's unfortunate that, we've shown the world as a nation that we're willing to elect this guy not once, but twice. It's terrible. But now that the Miles Taylors of the world are not in his administration, he's getting to realize some of his more vicious ambitions. and they are playing out in front of us, we are able to mobilize and show this is not what we're about. And this is not who we are. And hold on, we want to be friends with you all once again, once this nightmare is over. And that's been important in different conflicts. I've talked before about the importance of that in normalizing relationships with Vietnam after the war that they saw our protest movements in the United States and understood that it was a rogue government out of control. And it helped us rebuild relationships there to the point where there's tourism and immigration between those two countries now. It's so critical that it's seen. I'll also say this, like sometimes we're always looking for the big march because I think we grew up really admiring the 60s. Like the 60s in so many ways was the pinnacle of American progress, the civil rights movement, the voting rights movement. And the photos from the 60s are oftentimes the Million Man March and these massive movements. But the work of the 60s, and I used to run Martin Luther King's Foundation with his son, Martin Luther King III. The work was these small church gatherings, these small group gatherings that are happening across the country that were coordinating these efforts, that were helping pass not only bills at the national level, we know about those bills, but bills at the state and local level as well. And that's happening like never before in this country. I spend at least 2 to 4 hours a weekend at this point going to some local meeting and talking about what's going on. In Oregon, we passed a bill here to unmask officers. I was just talking to a indivisible chapter that helped push that through, met with a county commissioner that was working on legislation to protect immigrants. We are rebuilding that infrastructure in this country right now. And that is a asset that's going to turn into wins, not just now, not just in this fight, but into the future. So we all must remember to stay engaged, because I really feel like we let ourselves down by relaxing during those Biden years. I think we thought we got through the emergency, and we wanted to go back to a time where we didn't have to spend so much time, energy, money on civics, on our civic responsibility and our responsibility to one another. And really, we probably should have never made that mistake. We at least people, my age, were raised in an era where you didn't talk politics at the table and you didn't engage in these things. And so I hope we learned our lesson in Trump 2 here, that civic life is just a part of life. It's just a part of how we need to be engaging our fellow citizens. And we're able to not only meet this moment, but continue to meet the moment together moving forward. All right, so I'll jump into some questions. Anne asked, who is the guest speaker? Where's my mouse? Who's the guest speaker? Could you tell us a bit about who David is? David Sandalo was the guest speaker. He is a former senior official at the White House, State Department, and Department of Energy. He is the inaugural fellow at the Center of Global Energy Policy at the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University. And so he is a state security expert that has kind of dealt at the highest levels with challenges around international policy and conflict. Ideas for Signs for No Kings. We actually have a link for Signs for No Kings. Mercedes, do you have that link? I think we have that link. Let me see if I can find that link real quick. I think it's defiance.org/no kings. Was it not? There we go. Here we go. Here is some signs we've been working on. We're going to talk more about this at our Wednesday briefing, and we'll have more signs. But please get out there, let people know about Defiance. I think a lot of people. Here's my take on the marches, the activations. Those are there for us to activate our unactivated friends and bring them to the top of the funnel. But there's a lot of people who don't know that. There's a lot of people who get out there in March and ask themselves, like, is this making a difference? And so for those people that are asking those things, one, make sure beforehand they're bringing friends, they're bringing their uninitiated friends, and go make it fun. Go have coffee with them. Go have a nice dinner afterwards. Make it a fun experience. Get people engaged. Know that building community is exciting. It's fun and whatnot. But then as they go, what next? What can I do? Move them into things like this. There's a reason we have a weekly cadence here. There's things to do all the time to fight back against this administration. We stood this up to answer that question. Well, okay, I marched, but what else? Come here. Come to defiance.org. You can be a member for $1 a month. We prefer it's 5. We prefer it's 10 because it's more for us to grant out to pro-democracy organizations. But be a part of this community. Get others to be a part of this community and help grow it. It's going to be an awesome opportunity as people inevitably ask that question at No Kings. But yeah, there's the link for some of the signs that we are supporting you all carrying out there. But you can make your own sign. We have a QR code that you can print out and make your own sign. Just stick it on your own sign so people can join the club. You all have made this such a special place and such an impressive place. And so it's really exciting to just share what we're up to. And honestly, I was just talking to Miles about what we're doing this next month. It's so fucking exciting. It's so exciting. We have so many cool activations that are happening. They're going to have a real impact. And so if you are going to get people to join, this coming Saturday, it's going to be a good month. You're going to look good because we're going to be kicking some ass in April. Jean Marie Gunner said, do you agree we need a universal demand for this Saturday? Look, I think the No Kings brand has already done it. I think the No Kings brand has already done a really good job in building a universal demand. We don't want a king in this country. We don't want authoritarianism. We don't want fascism. And so we should stick with that. We should stick with, we have a constitution in this country we want it honored as our universal CTA. Now, there's always current events that are happening that allow us to build our coalition and expand it. So when we say no kings, what do we mean? We mean no forever wars. We mean no wars that are started by one man. We have a Congress that's endowed with that responsibility. And so welcome people whose, I don't want to say, I always say bugaboo issue. It's a little too flippant. Whose primary issue is no wars, no conflict. Welcome them in and say, that's what we mean when we say it. Well, people who want children treated better in this country, as we just freaking saw, whether it's the Epstein files or a lot of people have talked about pedophilia, more broadly, or how those immigrant children are being detained. If your thing is the protection of children, kings don't make children more safe. As we see, kings use children as pawns for their broader ambitions. And so I do think we have a CTA that's broad, that's strong. We don't need to make this an everything bagel as progressives have done over the last decade. And we should stick to that. We have a constitution. We have a Congress. We have a representative government. That's what we anticipate. That's what we want to maintain. And we need to get anyone who is kind of wielding the executive power lawlessly with the intentions to control our government or intimidate others. We need to get the hell out of there. Any plan to have Mr. Krasner return? Hell yeah. I actually texted Mr. Krasner all the time. Mr. Krasner is kind of on fire. FAFO is kind of on fire. If you were not tracking Mary Moriarty, I always skew her name, Minneapolis DA, launched 17 investigations into lawless acts by ICE agents. They are pursuing the prosecution of ICE agents. We are going to get some prosecutions. We are going to get some convictions eventually. And when those things start rolling in, even the investigations have a cooling effect. We don't need to get a conviction on day 2 to have a cooling effect. All we need to do is start showing that the country and its prosecutors are organizing against lawless ICE actions to have a cooling effect. As we saw that ICE agent run away at the airport, run away. Why is he running away? Because he's unmasked. And when you're unmasked, we can identify you. We don't need to work with DHS to figure out who you are if you commit a crime. And then we can prosecute you with state crimes. So that is happening. That group is meeting almost on a weekly basis right now. We'll bring Larry back on to give the update. It's expanding. Like I said, I hope FAFO covers the country like Verizon. I hope every American has that type of coverage. So that's the goal. And hopefully we're going to be able to report on some big wins. All right. That's it, gang. I made it to the end without Miles. Sans a Miles Taylor. It was fun rolling with you independently over here. I forget Miles' sign off. That's usually his job. All I have to do is I do this little thing, and then that's how I get out of here. So I'll just say, Mercedes helped me out. Thank you, Mercedes. Stay brave, stay together. No, there was one more, Mercedes. That's not it. There's a third. Miles is a man of threes. Come on. Oh, she killed it. Love you, Mercedes. It was so nice seeing you all. And we'll be back here same time tomorrow, 2 p.m. Pacific time, as Miles hate for me to lead with, 5 p.m. Eastern. See you soon. Bye, gang.